Welcome everyone to Programme 5 in this series of programmes about the humanities in primary schools. We have been focusing on primary geography in particular and examples of learning and teaching, and through this a number of different themes. We've considered time and place, and within programmes 5 and 6 we look at belief. Today we're going to think about places and how places influence our beliefs, our understanding, and our knowledge. And in particular, we'll look at the idea of stories. Sometimes these are stories that we develop by ourselves or through a group, through a social community. And so, with this particular programme, as with all of the others, let's just see where the balloon takes us, what geography it leads us over, and which different concepts and topics we end up alighting on. Welcome to this programme. Here we go. So geography isn't just about going further and looking for landscapes that are maybe beyond our sight and our understanding, but it's seeing deeper and thinking really about the environments that shape us, and in particular, our beliefs. Now, as you can see here, we've got a Venn diagram, which isn't your usual Venn diagram. Normally, you expect to be 3 areas of intersection. But there we have clearly got the human environment and our understanding of it through physical geography, through human geography, and also the way we record it. But within there, you have the natural geography of biology, ecology, geology, astronomy, and chemistry. And to the right, influencing our human geography, we have a number of different areas, including history and sociology and anthropology. And as part of that, we could also look at spirituality, our beliefs, cultures, traditions, and religion. So today we're focusing upon beliefs. Now, clearly we can't focus upon everything, so there'll be a number of different focuses. So first, how wonderful. So there was Meggie joining us once again and proving that commentary and filming, it doesn't have to be highly professional. It doesn't have to be fully scripted. Sometimes we just go with the flow. And I think if you've seen all 4 of my previous programs, you'll get the idea that we do indeed go with the flow here. So geography is inextricably linked to history and belief, and that includes religion, culture, tradition, spirituality, and philosophy. And in some cases, as we'll explore in a moment, that geography cannot be removed. Here we are in Rome at St. Peter's Basilica and Vatican City, which is the world's smallest country. It's a country within its own right and with its own boundaries and laws within Rome. And geographers study religions and their development based on the role that geography intersects with other important social components within a human geographic approach. Religions have been seen as developing due to environmental, landscape, and community relations and networks. And these religious developments geographically take place over time, and they can be oriented and individualized through spirituality developing within cultures that are embedded in specific geographical locations. And when we think of different religions, we might associate particular parts of the world as their holy places, as places of pilgrimage. But that doesn't stop those religions developing and spreading throughout the world. And here I've included on the right a map from 2000 of the number of Catholics as a percentage of all residents. There are approximately 1.1 billion Catholics in the world at the time of the production of this programme. And of course, they're not all in Rome. They're spread around the world. So geography not only affects where particular religions or belief systems such as the world's major faiths are located, but it also can affect how specific beliefs are practiced and the behaviour that it encourages. A book that was published on Sunday the 4th of October 2020 by Pope Francis was Fratelli Tutti, which basically translates as all brothers, or a sense of fraternity, community and social friendship being important in the world regardless of geography, regardless of past history and of beliefs or non-beliefs that are held. But whether it's through religion or other beliefs, we're influenced by the cultures and the regions we are from. And perhaps unknowingly, geographic factors can shape our beliefs not only in our early life and development years, but they can also affect us as we move and change where we reside throughout our lives. However, we are not hapless victims of our geography, and other factors can be brought to bear to shape our beliefs about a variety of topics. And community and identity is a strong value. It's a belief that is widely held, regardless of religion, regardless of culture and tradition. Everything comes back to fraternity, social friendship, support, community, and identity. So, as I said before, whilst religious communities might develop within particular geographies and landscapes, there will be groups that from different religions that spread out into the world and move to different countries for a variety of different regions and reasons. Did you spot the mistake there? I bet you did. Let's go on. Religious bonds are used to establish work and social networks for communities so that they can adapt to new countries, and where members from the same religion can often use this connection to better adapt to their new societies or the new areas within which they find themselves, whether out of choice or whether out of necessity. And of course, we all are aware of sacred places and particular zones that are this epicenter of particular beliefs, particular religions, or of cultures and traditions. So, for example, in the bottom left-hand corner, what used to be known as Ayers Rock in Australia is now known as Uluru, and it is a place of pilgrimage. And with many religions or many cultures, there is more than one sacred place, many places of pilgrimage that people decide they wish to visit for whatever reason. And that can affect the landscape. In some cases, as with Uluru, it is a geographical landmark in its own right. It's a piece of physical and natural geography that has come to be the epicenter of particular beliefs and also of stories. And this is another thing central to the humanities, whether it be geography, history, or religious education. There are stories and beliefs that develop and are passed on over time. And in other words, specific beliefs can be influenced, although they may have developed globally, they are influenced by local, geographically bound networks. And these networks can create a wider cultural understanding where people live in a relatively closed community with given beliefs that are localized to that community or area. And while beliefs in general and religion specifically may be affected by geography, some geographers are critical of this idea, and they say that we shouldn't use geography as a primary driver of beliefs. Another kind of belief, if you like, is agency. That is actions and choices that we develop for ourselves, maybe through a sense of autonomy. But these are equally a powerful influence upon beliefs. They help us to develop our experience, our memories, and the stories that influence our action, our behavior, and our sense of community. And what is evident from the literature about beliefs and geography is that geography can and does have a powerful influence on our lives. Many people do believe in something based on where they were born, and this might continue in later life as well. They may well be drawn back to the country of their birth, or a town, or even a particular building. However, there are other powerful factors that influence our lives, and this includes our sense of agency, autonomy, and our actions, the communities that we're beginning to form online, but also from a more historical and longer term point of view, our culture, our religion, tradition, and our values. So there you go. um, it's a joke in Scotland that our graveyards or our burial grounds are invariably in the best location in town with the best possible view. And while some might question that and say, well, why? Why would you do that? The actual occupants of the place don't really care, don't really notice that. But I think it's a place of reflection, and it's a place of reflection for those who visit, who think about the history of what's gone before. And over time, their beliefs may well develop about a particular person or about their lives and about the contribution that they made through their own sense of humanity. I think the dogs got their ham sandwich as well. They do like a bit of ham. Anyway, moving on, because we've put the idea of belief into place and into context within the humanities as a whole. But the first real encounter that children invariably have when it comes to stories and belief is through a whole range of geographically informed fiction. And these stories have become famous over time, and although some of them were written for children, usually not as such was the idea of the authors, it's become a following and it's become an influence amongst adults as well. So ultimately, we are thinking about stories. Children have their own stories. They come to school wanting to tell you the story of their own life, their own experiences, what they did at the weekend, what they've done on holiday, but they also want to share the stories that influence them, whether it's bedtime stories or things that they've actually heard within their family, stories that are passed down through generations, and ones that they hold on to dearly. And it's those kind of things that they want to hear again and again. Now, I talked about people whose writing has had an influence upon not only children, and has led to favourite and very famous children's stories, but also have been an influence and have been returned to throughout our adult lives. Here we have four very famous authors. Up in the top left-hand corner, we've got A.A. Milne, who wrote the Winnie the Pooh stories. Top right is Kenneth Grahame, who wrote The Wind in the Willows, and much of his story is actually based along the River Thames, particularly in Berkshire, and he is buried in the Holywell churchyard in Oxford. And talking of Oxford links, bottom left, we have C.S. Lewis, who is incredibly well known for his stories of Narnia, and the most famous one being The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. And in fact, if you go into the centre of Oxford and you go to the Bodleian Library and you've got the Bridge of Sighs, which links two parts of Hertford College, and you wander down New College Lane, as you go past the house that Edmund Halley, he of the famous comet discovery, if you go past Halley's house, there is a lamppost, and that is invariably referred to as the Narnian lamppost, because it is believed to have been the influence for the lamppost in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. And C.S. Lewis was a fellow at Magdalen College, and he used to rush, usually very late, along New College Lane on his way to the Eagle and Child, and he would pass that lamppost every time. So it's believed to be an influence. But again, we keep coming back to that idea of belief. And then bottom right, we have Tolkien, or J.R.R. Tolkien. And he, of course, wrote amongst his many stories The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. And other authors that you will know of, Beatrix Potter and Julia Donaldson, who wrote the Gruffalo and The Gruffalo's Child, amongst other many famous stories. And I'm sure she's still writing many books that are due to become firm favourites amongst children. And of course, coming back ever so slightly to what has now become an Oxford influence, to J.K. Rowling. And of course, other famous authors whose work is very, very well known, starting from the left, Robert Louis Stevenson, who wrote classics such as Kidnapped and Treasure Island. And although he was born in Edinburgh, he's actually buried in Samoa. He decided that the weather and the climate of the UK, and in particular Scotland, was not for him, and he spent his latter years out in Samoa. And in the middle there, we have J.M. Barrie, who wrote the Peter Pan stories, because there was more than one Peter Pan story. And of course, the one to the right, probably most famous for the present generation, is Roald Dahl. So lots of different stories there that they've written. But what they all have in common is that they've written fiction books that make use of the geographic landscape. Here we have the island, or the Isle of Struhe, which features in the Katie Morag stories. And within the national curriculum in Year 2, the Katie Morag stories, and particularly Struhe, feature quite strongly. But they've all used this sense of adventure, this need to go and explore, to escape, to be enriched within their work. And they bring in the natural and the constructed environment as a key part of a story's plot, theme, and setting. And so let's lead you further to programme 4, where we looked at maps and mapping. One of the things that you might want to do with children, and children themselves are very keen to do, is to draw maps of imaginary lands. Quite often the maps are the precursor for writing and developing and acting out stories. Sometimes they'll write the story and the map will evolve in their mind until they're ready to commit it to paper. So let's have a look at a few famous story maps. So here we have a landscape that although it's not completely familiar, it has a lot of geographic features, and as you look into the background, it could be New Zealand, it could be the Alps, it could be Scotland. And then with this next picture, Rivendell appears in the background, the kingdom of the elves. And as your eyes are drawn into the foreground, into the left-hand side there, you've got a few more clues as to our first map there. So The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Other well-known maps, Game of Thrones. These maps, by the way, are all available on Google. Now, some of them clearly you are not going to use with children, but out of your own interest, you might want to go and have a look at them. One I haven't included this time because it is so detailed, it's quite difficult on a slide like this to make anything out, is the Star Wars Galaxy map. And of course, I talked about the Narnian lamppost. So here we have a map of Narnia. And Narnia, C.S. Lewis based upon a real location, because Narnia actually exists as a place in Turkey. And some of his character names and his place names are based upon his love of languages. And Aslan, for example, is the Turkish word for lion. How appropriate, how wonderful. And here we have Gotham City from the Batman films, and another one, Jurassic Park. Again, you wouldn't necessarily share them with children. You might, but not tell them which programs they come from. That would be up to you. But again, very, very well known. And The Wizard of Oz. And here we have a map of the land of Oz with the Emerald City right in the middle there. And of course, other maps going back to Harry Potter, we have the Marauders maps, and maps that were made specifically not just for books and fiction, but also for film and for television. And of course, we can go in closer than the maps, and we can think about homes and beliefs and stories that surround home. What home is there to do, the comfort and the protection that it provides, but also different types of home, and not just human homes. Here we are in Hobbiton, and we have the Hobbit Hole with its yellow door. So the home of Bilbo Baggins and then of Frodo Baggins within the Lord of the Rings. And it's a place of security and sanctuary that they return to in their later days. And geography inspires myths. It inspires legends. These are from the story of The Hobbit on the left, and on the right a picture or an idea that inspired C.S. Lewis to come up with the idea of Narnia forever being cloaked in winter and the White Queen ruling over the whole land and its citizens. And you can see where myths and legends come into this, and both Tolkien and Lewis and many of the other authors that I've mentioned before, they were inspired by old legends. And in the case of Tolkien, he drew much of his inspiration from the Norse myths and legends. And if you're close enough, if you're lucky enough, you can go and visit the actual places that feature in children's stories. This will be familiar to, I think, at least one of you, because this is Ashdown Forest, and this was the inspiration for the 100-Acre Wood in the Winnie the Pooh stories. And this is the actual bridge where A.A. Milne and his son Christopher Robin played Pooh Sticks. And of course, in the stories of Winnie the Pooh, that fabulous, lovely, scruffy old bear and his friends went to play games, and especially Pooh Sticks. And if you don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to Pooh Sticks, find out about it, go and play. And I can assure you that the children, if they haven't heard of this game, will love playing it again and again. And of course, you can go, as I say, you can go and visit the place, but you're drawing inspiration all the time from the children's enthusiasms and their favourite stories. And this is these are a few pictures from a visit to Ashdown Forest. Maybe this on the left was the home of Piglet. Who knows? Just let your imagination run riot. And one of the great things about running that imagination and letting it loose is you can use that effectively with children. Build upon their imagination, but sometimes you've got to start the story and let them go with the flow. And of course, beliefs also relate to how places have changed over time. Now, some of that we can actually use historical artifacts, and we can use photographs as a way of seeing, for example, how the area of Paris around the Eiffel Tower has actually changed. But this is almost like a spot the difference game in its own right, because most of you will have looked through the arch there to see the differences in the buildings. But take your eyes up the Eiffel Tower to that first platform and see how it's changed. And of course, there are places that we are familiar with, but we can only, based on archaeological digs, based upon our knowledge of the past, what we thought and believe might have happened. So here's Stonehenge, presented in two very different ways. And this is Liverpool, this is Lime Street Station. And what you've got there is you've got the present and the past combined. And this is incredibly clever. And it is something that you can do with children, particularly within your local area. If you've got photos, you can hold them up to show the change. But you can explore their beliefs and their stories. Why has this changed? What kind of people worked here before? What kind of occupations did they have? What was life like? Explore their imagination, their ideas, and their beliefs. And of course, coming back to mapping again, here you've got two very different maps presented in different ways, but they were only produced 38 years apart. These are maps of the centre of Oxford. And what you've got there is you've got a map from 1605 on the left, and on the right 1643, so around the time of the Civil War. But although there are changes, a lot of it is to do with the mapping. And what's fascinating about maps of the local area is looking at them with children and saying, well, what has changed? How have things changed? Why is this named in such a way? Why is this named Greyfriars? What are friars? And something I learned not that long ago was the difference between monks and friars. Monks tended to stay within an enclosed community, within walls, if you like, whereas friars went out into the community in a spirit of fraternity and social friendship, coming back to something I talked about earlier. And of course, all sorts of different ideas, what a castle used to look like, why it was built there, who lived there, Roman times, and also bottom right there, you've got medieval streets. Streets that may be from Tudor times, so 400 years ago, but probably have been around a lot longer. maybe 800-900 years. And finally, we come to the idea of turning books and stories into what we think is a representation of real life, what it used to be like. Now, sometimes that can be something that has happened in the last 60 years, where there is a chance that people will still be alive that will remember those particular epochs in history and how beliefs and cultures, values, traditions and communities have changed. Some can be a lot further back. And here I'm focusing upon Oxford, further to the previously discussed stories and maps. Well done there. Top marks, gold star, if you've already spotted the spelling mistake. I could have claimed that actually in theology and etymology, or etology if you prefer, that stuis was the old-fashioned word for stories. But now I don't think I'm going to get away with that one. So clearly Oxford is it's a tourist trap, and it's been visited by tourists from all over the world for many a year. But the filming of Harry Potter in and around Oxford and around the college buildings has led to even more vibrancy when it comes to the communities, even if they're only with us for a short period of time. And children will love visiting Oxford to see many of the famous sites that have been included in the films. And of course, Oxford and Oxfordshire is a brilliant place when it comes to history, whether it's history dramas or whether it's making films. And Bampton may or may not be a name that's known to you. It is a village about 18 miles to the west of Oxford. So if you go out on the A420 as if you're going to Swindon, and you will see signs for Bampton. But why is Bampton famous? Why do people want to visit there? Well, it's all to do with a very famous historical drama known as Downton Abbey. And many of the outdoor shots, including the house of Isabel Crawley on the left and the church that belonged to Grantham Village, if you like, they are both in Bampton and were used regularly as filming locations. And of course, if we come back to Oxford, it is a place of adventure, of skullduggery. His Dark Materials, written by Philip Pullman, was based partly in Oxford, and indeed the start of the trilogy of books is based in an Oxford college. And of course, as we well know, Oxford has become famous for its murder stories, going back there to Frodo Baggins, who may look familiar to you there. If you haven't seen the Oxford murders and you have a particularly strong stomach for these things, you can watch them, and I recommend it to you. But of course, when it comes to murder in Oxford, then of course we think of Morse and Lewis, and of course the latest of Endeavour. So Lewis there on the left-hand side being filmed outside Blackwell's bookshop on the Broad, and then on the right you've got Endeavour being filmed outside the Lamb and Flag. So this is where we're going to leave it. Thank you for joining me for programme 5. And next time we're going to conclude this series of 6 programmes, and we're going to be looking at our beliefs relating to nature, wildlife, conservation, and the impact that we can have upon geography, our landscape, and our planet now and into the future. So here we go. Maggie's going to say goodbye to us and see you all again